Tension erupts on Delancey Street. Catherine Doyle, the most powerful female billionaire in Philadelphia, stands face to face with Andre Williams, the garbage collector who managed to do what she, with all her wealth and influence, could not: make her daughter feel safe. "Who do you think you are?" Catherine snapped, her breath trembling with fury. "You think you understand my daughter better than I do." Andre calmly placed his dust-covered glove on the trash bin, lifted his head and looked straight at the trembling woman. His voice was deep yet steady. "I don't need to understand. I just need to listen." "Listen to what?" Catherine stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "The girl hasn't spoken a word in 6 years." 6 years? What could you possibly have heard? Andre's lips curved slightly, his gaze unwavering. "Exactly. Those 6 years. Did you ever truly stay silent to listen? Or did you just keep talking, pushing, demanding she respond?" The words landed like a slap straight to Catherine's heart. Behind the iron bars, Lily's eyes widened as she followed every exchange. For the first time in her life, the girl witnessed someone daring to tell her mother things she had never allowed herself to hear. This is the story of how a quarrel that seemed to be nothing but fire and rage became the beginning of a child's path to healing. If you believe there are truths that must be spoken, no matter how hard they are to hear, hit subscribe to Kindness True Stories now, so you won't miss stories as gripping and emotional as this one. But what could drive a proud billionaire woman to scream at a sanitation worker? And why would a child raised in luxury find peace in a pair of calloused hands? To answer that, we need to rewind time back to the heavy silence inside the mansion at Society Hill, Philadelphia. Monday morning, 2 completely different lives begin a new day, unaware that in just a few days, fate would force them to cross paths in a way no one could have imagined. Society Hill. 8 a.m. Catherine Doyle woke before the alarm rang, not because she wanted to, but because her sleep was always haunted by the same nightmare, her daughter calling mommy in a sweet voice. And then, upon opening her eyes, the cruel reality would crash down. 6 years had passed, and she had never once heard that voice. Lying on the king-size bed, Catherine gazed out the 3rd-floor window. Outside, Society Hill was waking up. The red brick houses from the 18th century stood in neat rows like old soldiers, silently guarding the secrets of the past. "Damn it," Catherine muttered, eyes glued to her phone. 47 emails had arrived since just 11 p.m. the night before. Wall Street never slept, and neither did Catherine. But before the emails, she carried out the habit she had kept for 4 years, listening. Barefoot on the Persian carpet, she stopped in front of Lily's door, pressing her ear against the oak. Catherine held her breath, hoping just once to hear her daughter talking to herself, humming a tune, or even just sighing softly. Silence, always silence. Catherine gently pushed the door open. Lily was fast asleep, clutching the brown teddy bear. The last gift from David, the husband who had died in a car accident. Catherine's heart clenched. A familiar cocktail of grief, guilt, and a corrosive, unspoken anger swirling inside her. She had replayed that last argument with David 1,000,000 times. His gentle voice pleading, "Catherine, slow down. Lily needs a mother, not a CEO." Her own cold retort, "And she needs a roof over her head." David's security isn't free. He had left in the rain, his shoulders slumped. An hour later, the police called. The accident report cited driver error due to emotional distress. The words were a life sentence for Catherine, handed down in a sterile government font. Lily, just 7 years old, had been in the back seat. She emerged physically unscathed, but had never spoken another word. Across the city, in the pre-dawn gloom of West Philadelphia, Andre Williams began his day not with a nightmare, but with a ritual. At 4:45 a.m., the small coffee pot on his stove bubbled, filling the tidy, sparse apartment with a rich, earthy aroma. He moved with a quiet, efficient grace, a man comfortable in his own silence. His hands, already calloused even before the day's work began, wrapped around the warm mug. He looked at the photograph on his fridge, a smiling woman with kind eyes and a little boy on her lap. His sister Marissa and his nephew Isaiah, lost to a house fire 5 years prior, a fire the investigation said started due to faulty wiring in a neglected low-income apartment complex. Andre's grief had not turned inward like Lily's, nor outward like Catherine's rage. It had settled into a deep, resonant understanding of silence. He knew it wasn't always empty. Sometimes it was too full of things words could never hold. He finished his coffee, pulled on his bright orange sanitation department vest, and headed out into the sleeping city. His route that week took him through the historic, cobblestone streets of Society Hill. He knew the rhythms here, the discreet placement of trash, bins behind ornate iron gates, the specific quiet of old money. He worked steadily, the rumble of the truck a companionable sound. He noticed things. Which houses had parties the night before? Which ones had children, evidenced by forgotten bikes or a stray, colourful ball? And he noticed the silent house on Delancey Street, the Doyle mansion. Its bin was always perfectly placed, but it was often oddly light, containing little more than meticulously sorted recycling, and the occasional expensive, untouched takeout container. It spoke of a life both full and profoundly empty. The collision happened on a Thursday. Lily, under the watchful but distant eye of a succession of nannies and therapists, had begun to wander. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a beautifully appointed museum of her past. That morning, drawn by the rhythmic, reliable sounds of Andre's truck, the beeping, the grind of the compactor, sounds that were real and present, she slipped out the side gate. She stood on the sidewalk, a slight figure in a white dress, clutching her brown teddy bear, watching this large man perform his methodical dance with the city's waste. Andre saw her immediately. He didn't startle or offer a big, fake smile adults often give children they deem troubled. He simply nodded, a small acknowledging dip of his chin, and went back to work. The next day, she was there again, and the next, he began to leave small, inconsequential things on the lid of her trash bin after he emptied it. A perfectly round, smooth stone he'd found in Fairmount Park, a feather from a blue jay, a clean, discarded piece of colored glass worn smooth by the sea. He never waited for a thank you. He just left them. Lily began to collect them, arranging them on her windowsill in careful patterns. It was the first thing she had chosen to do for herself in 6 years. Catherine, monitoring the security feeds in a panic after the first disappearance, saw these silent interactions. Her initial terror morphed into a seething, protective fury. Who was this man? What did he want? Her wealth had built a fortress of therapists, psychiatrists, exclusive silent retreats, and cutting-edge neurological studies, all of which had failed. And now, a garbage man was accomplishing what millions of dollars could not. It was an insult. It undermined her entire life's work, the very drivenness she believed was for Lily's own good. She stormed out onto Delancey Street that fateful morning, a hurricane in a tailored suit, ready to demolish this perceived threat. But Andre's calm was an immovable object. His question, "Did you ever truly stay silent to listen?" didn't just slap her. It cracked the carefully constructed dam, holding back an ocean of unacknowledged truth. She stood there, trembling, not just with anger now, but with the terrifying vertigo of realizing she might be wrong. Behind the window, Lily did something extraordinary. She lifted her hand and placed it softly against the glass, her eyes fixed on Andre. It was a gesture of connection, fragile but undeniable. The standoff broke not with more words, but with a sound. A small, choked sob escaped Catherine. It was a sound of utter defeat, of a fortress finally surrendering. She didn't turn away, though every instinct told her to retreat behind her walls of money and authority. Andre saw the crack in her armor. He slowly removed his other glove, revealing hands that were rough, strong, and honest. "She's not broken." "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, carrying over the gentle morning breeze. "She's just buried under a lot of heavy things. Sometimes you don't need a crane to move that weight. You just need to start." Carefully clearing it away, one piece at a time, he gestured to the now empty bin. "My job isn't just to take away the trash. It's to make space for what's next." He gave one last lingering look at Lily's window, meeting her gaze and offering that same slight nod. Then he climbed into his truck, rumbled the engine to life. and continued down the street, leaving Catherine alone on the sidewalk. Her world irrevocably shifted. What happened next was not an instant miracle. Lily did not speak, but a new, fragile routine began. Catherine, for the first time, cancelled her morning meetings. She started sitting with Lily in the sunroom, not with flashcards or therapeutic tools, but in silence. She simply existed alongside her daughter, watching the light change on the walls. She stopped trying to fill the silence with solutions and began, haltingly, to listen to it. It was agony. The silence screamed at her of her failures, her loss, her loneliness. But she stayed. André, on his route, would sometimes see them sitting there. He never waved or intruded. But one morning, he left a small potted sunflower seedling on the bin. No note. Lily brought it inside and placed it on the windowsill with her stones. Catherine watched her daughter's careful, tender ministrations to the plant, the way her small fingers brushed the soil. She was listening to what her daughter needed, not with her ears, but with her eyes, her heart. She saw the comfort Lily took in routine, in small, predictable kindnesses, in things that grew with quiet patience. Weeks passed. The sunflower stretched toward the light. One afternoon, Catherine found Lily staring at a photograph of David. Her own grief, long buried under blame and busyness, rose up. Without thinking, she spoke not to Lily, but to the memory. "I miss him so much," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I was so afraid of failing you both that I failed you both completely." She didn't see Lily get up, didn't feel her approach until a small hand, warm and tentative, slipped into hers. Catherine froze, her breath catching. She looked down. Lily was looking up at her. Her eyes, David's eyes, filled with an ocean of understanding. She didn't speak, but she squeezed her mother's hand. It was a conversation, the first one in 6 years. It was the beginning of the clearing away. Catherine Doyle did not become a different person overnight. The billionaire, the powerhouse, was still there, but a new channel had been carved in her heart. She used her influence, but differently. She established a foundation in David's name, not just for childhood trauma, but for housing safety inspections, inspired by a story she later hesitantly asked André about over coffee, a meeting she requested. On a park bench, as equals in grief, she learned about Marissa and Isaiah. She learned that André's quiet strength was born of a fire, not of greed, but of loss and a determination to see value where others saw discard. André never became a fixture in their lives. He remained the man on the route. But he was a catalyst, the hinge upon which a broken door finally began to swing open. The healing was Lily's path, and she walked it at her own pace. Words did eventually return, slow and soft like seedlings breaking ground. The first word she spoke almost a year later was not "mommy." It was "thank you," whispered to the now tall sunflower, its head heavy with seeds. But the second word, spoken later that same day when Catherine brought her a glass of water, was "mom." It was raspy from disuse, fragile, and more beautiful to Catherine than any boardroom triumph. The mansion in Society Hill would never be filled with the careless noise of a typical childhood, but the heavy silence was gone, replaced by a peaceful quiet, punctuated by the sounds of a life being gently, patiently rebuilt, the scratch of a pencil on paper as Lily began to draw, the soft murmur of a mother reading aloud, the distant, reliable rumble of a garbage truck on Thursday mornings. A sound that now meant not an intrusion, but a reminder that sometimes the most profound truths are found not in the boardroom or the bank vault, but in the quiet spaces between words, in the courage to listen to a silence, and in the unexpected grace found on a dusty street, offered by a pair of calloused hands that knew how to make space for what comes next. If this story reminded you that healing often comes from the most unexpected places and that every voice, even a silent one, has a story worth hearing, then please support our channel. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear a story of quiet hope, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories for more real-life tales of connection, courage, and the unexpected ways light finds its way through the cracks.